in the vast wilderness of western Alaska, amidst the tight-knit community of Pitkas Point, a bright star emerged, Sophie Sergie. Her story is one of determination, ambition, and ultimately, tragedy. Join us as we delve into the captivating journey of Sophie's life, from her humble beginnings in a remote village to the shocking events that unfolded on a seemingly ordinary day in Fairbanks. Prepare to be gripped by a tale of resilience, investigation, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Who was Sophie Sergie, and what secrets lie hidden in her untimely demise? Born in 1973, Sophie Sergie was from Pitkas Point, a tiny, secluded community on the Yukon River in western Alaska. With fewer than 200 residents at the time, Pitkas Point was primarily home to native people, which included Sophie, who was a member of the Yupik tribe. Sophie's early years were influenced by the distinctive challenges and natural beauty of rural Alaska as she grew up in this tight-knit community. The village, branded by its remoteness and tiny population, taught Sophie with an understanding of community, family values, and an attachment to her indigenous roots. Life in Pitkas Point was perhaps marked by deep bonds among the residents who embraced the same way of living in the secluded Alaskan wilderness. Sophie was said to be a lovely daughter and an exceptional person. She had a bright personality, was a hard worker, and was very determined to achieve her goals. She rose to prominence in the community's eyes, especially among the younger generation. Sophie had goals that went beyond the confines of her little community, and she aspired to accomplish noteworthy achievements throughout her life. Despite the difficulties brought on by the distant location and lack of resources, Sophie's commitment to learning was evident. She was fortunate enough to be awarded a full scholarship to the University of Alaska, a prestigious opportunity that meant moving about 500 miles from her hometown. This relocation marked an enormous shift from the close-knit indigenous hamlet to the vibrant, multi-ethnic campus's environment. Sophie was fascinated by the marvels of the aquatic life, so her academic interests at the university were focused on marine biology. Sophie was doing exceptionally well in her studies, but she also happened to be going through a difficult time, and therefore decided to drop out of university. There were two reasons behind this choice. First and foremost, Sophie wanted to go back home to support and watch over her aging mother because she felt a strong sense of duty towards her family. Second, she realized the financial limitations imposed by her academic pursuits, and so made the decision to work and save money for her required dental surgery. Sophie started working as a teacher's assistant at a school in her local village while she was away from the university. This decision demonstrated her excellent work ethic and her dedication to giving back to the community. Instead of burdening her family, Sophie chose to take charge of her finances and work towards saving money for her dental treatment, which proves her independence and sense of responsibility. She planned to re-enroll in college after finishing her 2 years of study in marine biology. But in April 1993, Sophie's life tragically changed course while she was spending a weekend in Fairbanks. The early hours of April 25, 1993, appeared to be just like an ordinary day with routine activities. Sophie had taken a flight to Fairbanks on this particular day to see a dentist. She intended to stay with her friend Shirley, who was a student at the University of Alaska Fairbanks and lived in a dorm in Bartlett Hall. That evening, Sophie went out with her friends to watch a film and get some food, indulging in pastimes that were typical of a college student. Sophie's last known picture shows smiling, with arms extended as though she were about to hug the world as they watched the sunset. After going back to her friend Shirley's dorm in Bartlett Hall, Sophie relaxed for the rest of the evening, chilling out with Shirley and her boyfriend Noah, watching movies. As the evening wore on, Sophie went to the common area for a drink and then chose to have a cigarette. Shirley advised Sophie to smoke in the second floor's restroom to avoid catching cold, considering the below-freezing weather in Alaska. Sophie complied, and in her absence, Shirley and Noah made the decision to depart, notifying Sophie with a note left on the door. Unbeknownst to them, This choice would further deepen the mystery surrounding Sophie's abduction. The following day, when Shirley got back to her dorm room, she realized that Sophie still hadn't come back. Shirley, worried and unable to locate her friend Sophie, called the police and reported her missing. At the same time that the tragedy in Fairbanks unfolded, Sophie's orthodontist called to inform her family that she hadn't showed up for her scheduled appointment. As the day went on, a janitor sweeping the second floor's bathroom in Bartlett Hall came across a startling discovery. He discovered Sophie Sergie's lifeless body in a bathtub after a vicious assault which involved binding, gagging, tasering, battering, stabbing, and, at last, a gunshot to the back of her head. Sophie's trousers and underwear were pulled down, her sweater and bra were pushed up, and her body was damp from the running water, presenting a crime scene that precisely portrayed the heinousness of the incident. The findings stunned the University of Alaska Fairbanks community and prompted the city officials to launch an immediate investigation. A sense of shock and astonishment was sparked by Sophie's tragic murder, which prompted increased security and mental health services for students in the college. When Sophie's body was found on April 26, 1993, local police, forensic specialists, and detectives swarmed the dorm to thoroughly inspect and record every square inch of the crime scene. Given the severity and viciousness of crime, a detailed investigation was necessary to apprehend the offender. Detectives meticulously gathered evidence, going through each bathroom tile looking for fingerprints, hair samples, or any possible DNA from the site. Even with 1993's forensic technology limitations, investigators realized the significance of storing these samples for advancements in DNA testing down the road. Sophie's autopsy showed no signs of any illegal drug or alcohol in her system, highlighting the seriousness of the offense committed against her even more. The sequence of events leading up to Sophie's untimely demise was mostly pieced together by eyewitness accounts. Later on, two students, Vanessa Allen and Jennifer Roy, offered crucial details. Vanessa, who during the semester stayed in the dorm, recalled feeling strange when she went into the rarely used East Side's restroom on the evening of 25th April. She became suspicious when she spotted a tub-side light in the restroom was on, as it was not like usual. Vanessa also overheard noises coming from the other room that sounded like firecrackers. Likewise, Jennifer Roy, a graduating senior, was still awake and studying on the west side of the dormitory. On Monday, around 1:30 in the morning, she unmistakably heard noises through the common wall with the adjacent bathroom. There was a heavy thud against the wall, an indiscernible rustling sound, and some whispering that Jennifer assumed might be of a boy and girl. The combination of witness accounts, forensic evidence, and the graphic details of Sophie's incident led to an increased effort to track down and capture the assailant. The investigation faced difficulties because of the transient nature of college campuses, with many dropping out throughout the semester and some never returning. It was challenging getting hold of people for interrogation since room assignments were often revised and the dorm list didn't always provide correct information about who lived there. By questioning witnesses and following leads, investigators sought to piece together the order of events that took place the night of the crime, focusing on the brief period of time between 1 and 5 a.m. when Sophie was killed. As the years went by, Sophie's case grew cold and was rarely looked into by the investigators. Whilst the forensic technology advanced, particularly in the field of DNA testing, authorities took advantage of this to re-examine the evidence. In the quest to determine the perpetrator of Sophie's horrific slaying, attention focused on leveraging the stored DNA samples. In 2018, a breakthrough occurred when detectives were able to build a genetic profile of the suspect by submitting the stored samples for DNA analysis, owing to the advancements in genetic genealogy. This profile could later be uploaded to DNA databases, enhancing the possibility of finding a match. The resolution of Sophie's case was largely dependent on the unwavering pursuit of justice and utilizing cutting-edge forensic techniques. A key factor was the use of genealogical DNA analysis, a method that has recently become popular in cracking cold cases. By comparing DNA from crime scenes with DNA databases that are accessible to the general public, this technique could potentially pinpoint family ties. Genealogical DNA analysis has allowed the investigators to identify suspects in crimes that have been unsolved for decades. The case took a turn when Stephen Downs, a Maine resident, was identified as the primary suspect. Subsequent inquiry showed that Downs also attended UAF and lived in the same dorm where Sophie was killed at the time of the brutal assault. Downs' DNA was found to match the sample taken from Sergie's body years after the crime, and he was taken into custody. Prior to this, Downs had denied having any relationship with Sergie during his 2019 interview. He was extradited from Maine, where he was employed as a nurse. Prosecutors built a strong case against Downs during the trial by gathering evidence that connected him to the location of the crime. Witnesses including Vanessa Allen and Jennifer Roy gave crucial testimonies, sharing details of what happened to them during the night of the attack. The trial centered on piecing together the events leading up to Sophie's tragic passing, based upon the recollections of those present in Bartlett Hall on that fateful night. Witness testimonies, together with developments in forensic science, proved to be a decisive factor in Sophie Sergie's and her family's bitter journey towards justice. As the trial came to its conclusion, Stephen Downs was found guilty of both the assault and murder of Sophie Sergie and given a sentence of 75 years in jail. Even after justice has been served, Sophie's untimely death has left an irreversible impact on the whole community. Even if her friends and family were able to move on from the tragic events of 1993, nearly 30 years later, the impact on their lives has never fully healed. The journey of Stephen H. Downs' capture and sentencing from an unresolved cold case exemplifies the revolutionary potential of genetic genealogy in providing victims with justice and comfort to mourning families. As the trial concluded and Stephen Downs was sentenced to 75 years in jail for the assault and murder of Sophie Sergie, the community of Pitcairn Point and the University of Alaska Fairbanks were left grappling with the aftermath of the tragedy. While justice had been served, the wounds inflicted by Sophie's untimely death remained raw and unhealed. Despite the passage of nearly 30 years, the impact of her loss lingered, casting a long shadow over the lives of her loved ones and the community at large. Yet, amidst the closure brought by Downs' capture and sentencing, questions still lingered. What drove Downs to commit such a heinous act? Were there others involved? The resolution of Sophie's case offers a glimpse into the power of genetic genealogy in solving cold cases, but it also raises broader questions about safety, justice, and the enduring effects of violence. As we reflect on Sophie's story, we invite you, the viewers, to share your thoughts and opinions. What lessons can we learn from Sophie's journey, and how can we work together to prevent such tragedies in the future? Your comments and insights are invaluable as we continue to seek understanding and healing in the wake of Sophie's tragic death. In 1980, while returning from school, an 8-year-old girl, Asenath Dukat, was viciously slain. Her tragedy left behind a profound effect on the city of Upper Arlington, Ohio, for decades. Now, the authorities have officially announced that her case has been finally resolved. The Upper Arlington police made this statement on Thursday. The Asenath Dukat homicide investigation has been concluded. Authorities have now publicly named the alleged murderer of Asenath Dukat, who was killed over 4 decades ago on her way back from school. 8 years old, Asenath Dukat's murder was one of the most notorious unsolved mysteries of the neighborhood, and after 42 years, the Upper Arlington police believe that they have found the perpetrator. Thanks to developments in DNA technology, the culprit in this case has been identified as Brent Strutner, said the Upper Arlington police. Strutner, however, took his own life at the age of 24 in June of 1984. On 3 June 1980, Dukat exited Barrington Elementary School and set out to walk the roughly mile to her residence on Malvern Road. However, she never made it. According to Upper Arlington police, Dukat's body was discovered in a shallow creek at the mouth of a tunnel, close to First Community Village, about 4 hours after a missing persons report was filed. She had been struck in the head by a 20-pound limestone boulder, as per the authorities. The tragedy stunned the Upper Arlington community and remained unexplained for over 40 years. In an effort to solve the case, investigators interviewed a number of individuals and named over a dozen as potential suspects for further inquiry throughout the years. Ultimately, police identified the individual they believed to be the assailant in accordance with DNA evidence. In 2008, authorities received information about a DNA profile obtained from the evidence gathered during the investigation, which gave a match with Strutner. Subsequently, investigators reviewed all the other pieces of evidence to ascertain whether Strutner operated alone or in concert with others. However, they weren't able to find any DNA proof that could link Strutner to any other person. During the time when Dukat passed away, numerous attacks on young girls had transpired, including a kidnapping attempt on a young girl on Henderson Road. According to Upper Arlington police, the attack happened just a few months after Dukat's murder, and the man who carried out that attack was affiliated with Strutner. That individual, who was imprisoned for the attempted kidnapping, was also regarded as a person of interest in Dukat's slaying. Nevertheless, as reported by the police division, not enough evidence was found to connect him with Asenath's homicide. In order to find out if any more evidence may show up, detectives also conducted follow-up interviews of multiple witnesses and persons of interest. The division is certain that every possible lead has been followed up on, police added. Before we announced anything, we wanted to make sure all the parts and pieces were tied together, they explained. Strutner had been a suspect long before we had acquired the means to identify him. According to Chief of Police Steve Farmer, the police has been working non-stop for decades to solve this case. According to him, till this day, the impact of this awful incident on our city from 1980 remains evident. We hope the Dukat family finds some comfort as they continue to recover. Our thoughts and prayers will always be with them. In a statement, members of The Long Walk Home, the Asenath Dukat Project, stated that the press release from Upper Arlington just validated what they have already known and conveyed via their project since its start in 2019. The group said in a statement that although the authorities of Upper Arlington may have concluded the case, it is far from over for them. We commend the many hours of diligent work and effort that culminated in verifying Brent Strutner's involvement in the heinous act. Nevertheless, after considering all of the available information, it is plausible to believe that Brent Strutner did not act alone. As long as the Dukat family and our community continues to stand with us in our attempts to bring everyone involved to justice, our mission will continue to be driven by that belief. It has been bittersweet, according to Sergeant McKean, to be able to provide the Dukat family with answers after more than 40 years. He asserted that it is untrue to imply that there's joy in closing. The case revolves around sorrow. The investigators who worked on it will always have it as a part of them. This is one of those cases that lingers with you. McKean added that the case also demonstrated the resilience of the Upper Arlington community. When Dukat was reported missing, many locals took part in her search and have assisted with the inquiry over the years, hoping that the case would be resolved. He said that everyone involved wanted to reach this point. We hope it gives the Dukat family some measure of solace. Lyon was 9 years old at the time of her childhood friend's demise. The two attended the same Sunday school class at Our Lady of Victory Church in Marble Cliff and frequently played jump rope during the break. Usually the girls would walk home together, but by the time Dukat's class was dismissed that day, Lyon had already left. It's hard to talk about even now. It doesn't really bring any closure for the majority of us who lived through it, she said, because there has been so much gossip over the decades. Being aware of the fact that Strutner is also deceased is the most difficult aspect since it implies that justice won't be served. After over 4 decades, the case of Asenath Dukat's tragic murder has finally reached a conclusion with the naming of Brent Strutner as the alleged perpetrator. While the Upper Arlington police believe they have found the culprit, questions still linger about whether Strutner acted alone and if justice has truly been served. The community's resilience and efforts to seek closure are evident, but the mystery surrounding Dukat's murder may not be fully resolved. As the Dukat family continues to cope with the aftermath of this tragedy, we're left wondering, are there more secrets yet to be uncovered? Could there be others involved in this heinous act? Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below as we delve deeper into this perplexing case. In the quiet town of Bothell, Washington, a young woman named Jody Loomis embarked on her usual evening bike ride, only to be discovered later struggling for her life on a remote dirt track. What followed was a terrifying discovery, a shocking crime that shook the community to its core. Despite initial suspects and leads, the case went cold for decades. However, recent advancements in DNA technology brought new hope, leading to the identification of a suspect decades later. The story takes unexpected twists and turns, culminating in a trial with a tragic end, leaving the community with unanswered questions and scars that linger to this day. What led to the sudden turn of events in the trial? And how did DNA evidence ultimately crack the case after so many years? Join us as we delve into the captivating saga of Jody Loomis, a case that serves as a reminder of the enduring impact of violent crimes on communities and the relentless pursuit of justice, no matter how long it takes. Born in Salt Lake City, Utah, on the 5th of June 1952, Jody Loomis was a lively and cheerful person who fit well with her family. Jody's upbringing as the middle child among her older brother John and younger sister was marked by affection and shared recollections. She surpassed physical standards despite her modest 5'2" stature with her robust physique, stunning blonde hair, and piercing blue eyes, which echoed the beauty of her empathetic nature. Her love for nature and animals further characterized her vivacious nature. Jody once stood up to hunters who were cruelly shooting pigeons, demonstrating her unwavering commitment to her values in a moment that defined her as a person. Her kind gesture of treating a wounded pigeon showed a sensitive side of her that stood in contrast with the tragedy that would eventually claim her life. On August 23, 1972, Jody went on her usual evening bike ride to check on her horse at a stable 6 miles away from her family's Snohomish County home. Around 5:30 p.m., a couple came across her struggling for her life on a remote dirt track. What had been discovered was a terrifying scene. The couple who discovered Jody's partially naked body with a gunshot wound to the head brought her to a hospital. Sadly, Jody passed away from her wounds upon arriving. A subsequent autopsy revealed a further shock that she had also been assaulted, raising even more questions regarding the tragedy that took place in the quiet town of Bothell. Following Jody's case, detectives have the difficult challenge of solving a crime that will plague the community for many years to come. The standard approach is to look into people who are closer to the victim. Jim, Jody's fiancé, had been the first person of interest since he had recently moved into the Loomis residence before the incident, but his alibi soon cleared him, reported him of being at work in the hospital as the tragedy struck. After that, the attention switched towards the Rice family, Ken in particular, along with his son Alan, who were chopping wood close to the crime scene. Although the family's proximity raised some red flags at first, no compelling evidence surfaced. The case remained cold for almost 2 years, allowing disappointment to escalate until a tip reintroduced optimism. Reports emerged of a motorcycle club affiliated with the Reaper's Roadman gang, who were purportedly bragging about having assaulted and killed a young lady. The lead was traced to a .22 caliber pistol, the exact same caliber as the murder weapon. But the connection was invalidated by an FBI ballistics test, leaving detectives perplexed. Rumors about a serial killer grew as fear spread throughout the community when young women started to go missing. The concerns escalated as this individual emerged as a key suspect. During the early stages of the investigation, as fear grasped the Snohomish County, following numerous instances of disappearances of young women, he became a well-known figure in the criminal underworld of Snohomish County. At the time of Jody's slaying, he was operating in the Pacific Northwest, which led to suspicions regarding his possible involvement in the crime. His criminal activities were traced back close to the Snohomish County, which raised concerns about a potential connection. The details of Jody's case didn't precisely correspond with his documented methods, even if her age and physical attributes were somewhat similar to those of his previous targets. Though there were discrepancies, detectives examined potential ties, out of concern that a serial offender might be involved. Decades later, regardless of the earlier focus on this individual, detectives came to the conclusion that the specifics of Jody's fateful end were not consistent with his documented method of operation. Regrettably, the case became cold because there wasn't any solid proof connecting him to the act. Utilizing the latest developments in DNA technology, the Snohomish County Cold Case Unit reopened their investigation in an attempt to bring Jody justice. But over time, important pieces of evidence, such as swabs, the victim's underpants, and the bullet, had seemingly gone missing, making the narrative's reconstruction extremely challenging. Unexpectedly, a ray of hope appeared out of nowhere. Jody's left boot, which she was wearing at the time of her passing. DNA of an unidentified male was discovered in this ostensibly inconspicuous item, by a fortunate turn of events. This critical piece of evidence was successfully utilized by the crime laboratory to create a DNA profile in 2008, which resurrected the previously dormant investigation. The profile was uploaded into CODIS, the national DNA database, but at the time, there were no matches. A major development in the field of forensic genealogy occurred in July 2018, approximately a decade later. The DNA profile obtained from the boot sample was sent to Parabon Nanolabs, a DNA testing facility situated in Virginia. By meticulously searching through a public genealogy database, investigators were able to narrow down to a list of possible suspects by finding matches with family members. In the end, the investigation focused on the Miller family, and Terrence Miller was deemed as the main suspect. Terrence Miller, a retired heavy-duty machinery operator who lives just miles from the scene of the crime, emerged as a person of interest. His dark background, which included convictions for indecent behavior in 1968 and assaulting a preteen girl in the 1970s, provided a troubling image. The accusations became even more serious when it was reported that he had also abused minors. Terrence Miller discarded a coffee cup outside a local casino, while undercover police agents carefully followed him and retrieved it in a well-planned operation. A startling discovery was revealed by the DNA profile taken from the cup. It was a precise match for the male DNA collected from Jody's shoes. Terrence Miller, now 78 years old, was apprehended in April 2019 and is facing charges in connection with the assault and murder of Jody Loomis. Even though he entered a not guilty plea, he underwent a trial in late 2020. 2 weeks of crucial statements and evidence presentations took place in the courtroom. November 9, 2020, right before the jury was about to return a verdict, saw tragedy strike once more. At home, Terrence Miller committed suicide, leaving a trail of unanswered questions and an entire community devastated from the unforeseen conclusion of a much-anticipated trial. The jury subsequently convicted Terrence guilty of the accusations against him without knowing of his passing. The posthumous verdict's irony reverberated across the courtroom, signifying a sort of justice, albeit an unpleasant one. The attempts to overturn the guilty conviction were unsuccessful in December 2020, bringing an end to an almost 5-decade-long chapter. The complicated case of Jody Loomis serves as a sobering reminder of the long-lasting effects violent crimes have on communities and the never-ending efforts of the authorities to bring those responsible for the offenses to justice, even years after they were committed. Even though the case was resolved, Bothell, Washington residents will always carry the scars from the tragic incident of August 23, 1972, in their subconscious. Despite the posthumous conviction, one can't help but wonder, what drove Terrence Miller to take his own life? What other secrets might he have held that died with him? The aftermath of this trial leaves us pondering the complexities of justice and the lingering impact of violent crimes on communities. Now, we turn to you, our viewers, to share your thoughts and insights. What are your reflections on the conclusion of this decades-long saga? Do you believe justice was truly served? Join the conversation and let us know your thoughts. If you find this video compelling, show your support by giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to our channel, and ringing that notification bell. By doing so, you'll stay updated about the latest investigations and mysteries. Your support means the world to us as we continue to pursue the truth in the world of unsolved cases.